Hey everyone, welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to getting smart on some truly fascinating topics. Today we're diving headfirst into the intense realities of military life. We're exploring, the distinct challenges, the high-stress environments, and the profound impact these unique pressures have on the health of service members. It's a world where resilience isn't just a buzzword, it's
Mhm.
absolutely essential. And when we talk about impact, the numbers truly tell a sobering story. Get this. In 2021 alone, U.S. military personnel sustained over 1.4 million physical injuries. Over a million of those musculoskeletal. That's huge.
It really is.
And on the mental health front, between 2016 and 2020, over 450,000 active service members got a mental health diagnosis, including substance use disorders. And that
Wow.
number actually jumped by 10% in 2021.
Mm.
But here's where it gets, well, maybe alarming. Sleep disorders, we saw dramatic increases. Obstructive sleep apnea up 28.2 times, and
Mm.
insomnia soared 45.3 times from 2005 to 2019, plus an 11% increase in all sleep disorders between 2020 and 2021.
That's staggering.
Right. And it doesn't stop there. Obesity hit 21.6% in 2021, and eating disorder diagnoses went up too. When you look at these figures, what stands out most to you?
Well, what's truly striking here isn't just the sheer volume, but the pattern. It screams that the traditional focus on just physical readiness isn't enough. It just can't address these complex, interconnected challenges.
Exactly.
And that's precisely why, back in 2020, the U.S. Army made a pretty significant pivot. They launched the Holistic Health and Fitness Program, or H2F.
H2F, right.
Yeah, and this program represents a major cultural shift, moving beyond physical health as the only measure of readiness to embracing a truly holistic approach. H2F integrates 5 critical domains: mental, physical, sleep, nutritional, and spiritual health. They're all seen as interconnected.
And you can see that in practice.
Definitely. Things like sleep leadership training, helping commanders prioritize rest, or tactical nutrition programming, which isn't just, eat your veggies, but designing specific nutrition plans to optimize performance and recovery for really intense demands.
I really like that shift towards a holistic view. And that leads us perfectly into our key concept for today's deep dive: hardiness. It's maybe not a term you hear every day, but it's this critical psychological factor. It basically acts like an internal protective shield.
That's a great way to put it. It enables individuals to effectively manage those elevated stress levels without succumbing to illness or injury.
Okay, so how do we unpack hardiness into something we can really grasp?
Well, what's fascinating here is that hardiness isn't just one broad trait. It's actually built on 3 interconnected components, the 3 C's. Understanding these is key. First, there's commitment. This is the tendency to really engage fully in life activities, find meaning, purpose.
Stay curious.
Exactly. Maintain that deep curiosity. Think of it as having a strong why that keeps you grounded, invested, even when things get tough.
Okay, so being really invested, finding that purpose. What's the next C?
The second is control. This is the belief that your actions can genuinely influence events and outcomes. It's that sense of agency. The conviction that you're not just passively experiencing things, but your efforts make a difference.
Right, feeling like you have some say, some power over your situation. And the third C?
And finally, there's challenge. This is a really positive attitude towards change and new experiences. Instead of seeing difficult situations as threats, someone high in challenge sees them as opportunities for growth, for learning.
Like, okay, this is tough, but what can I get out of it?
Precisely. How can I become stronger? That's the mindset.
So if these 3 C's are the ingredients for hardiness, our mission today is to take a deep dive into how this psychological recipe actually translates into real-world health outcomes.
Oh.
We're looking at a recent scoping review from the Journal of Positive Psychology. It analyzed 48 studies from 1990 to 2025.
A pretty wide range.
Yeah, understanding how hardiness influences health in military personnel, specifically using that H2F framework. It's like our shortcut to understanding this vital connection. Okay, let's unpack this then, because the review tells us a staggering 41 of the 48 studies they looked at focused specifically on mental health.
Yeah, a huge emphasis there.
So what's the big picture takeaway, hardiness and mental well-being?
Well, what's profoundly consistent, really striking, is the clear pattern. Higher hardiness scores were overwhelmingly associated with lower levels of anxiety and depressive symptoms. It's not just like a subtle trend, it's a robust finding across many studies.
Okay, so it's not just about gritting your teeth through stress, is it? What were the specific aha moments or mechanisms they found for anxiety and depression?
Exactly. It's less about simply enduring stress and more about recalibrating how you perceive it and respond to it. For anxiety and depression, hardiness consistently correlated with less reliance on avoidance coping.
Avoidance coping, like trying to ignore the problem.
Yeah, trying to ignore or push away stressful thoughts or feelings, which, often backfires. Instead, hardy individuals showed a stronger tendency to pursue positive goals that led to greater feelings of autonomy, competence. One study even found hardiness acted like a buffer against depressive symptoms, specifically from deployment stress.
Like a mental shock absorber.
Pretty much. And when it came to PTSD, higher hardiness consistently linked to fewer PTSD symptoms. And again, that avoidance coping popped up as a significant mediator.
A mediator. So like the how.
Exactly, the crucial middle step. Hardiness reduces PTSD by making people less likely to use those unhelpful avoidance strategies. And the reduction in avoidance then directly lessens the PTSD symptoms. It's the pathway.
So it's about shifting from an unhelpful strategy to something more constructive. What about substance use? Did they look at that?
They did. Moving to alcohol use and abuse, hardiness was negatively associated with at-risk use and abuse. This was particularly noted among male Reserve and National Guard soldiers. And guess what mediated it?
Let me guess. Avoidance coping.
You got it. Especially under high-stress conditions like combat exposure. Hardiness even seemed to buffer the effects of non-deployment emotions, like guilt, on hazardous drinking.
Wow. So it's like having an internal compass steering you away from those unhealthy coping habits.
That's a good analogy.
And for overall psychological distress, what did they find there?
Similar story. Strong links between higher hardiness and more effective stress management. That led to lower psychological distress overall, and higher positive indicators too, like well-being and general fitness. Individuals with greater hardiness actually perceived less stress overall.
They saw situations differently.
It seems so. They were also less prone to burnout and emotional exhaustion in demanding military settings. Which, raises the big question. How does hardiness do all this? How does it achieve this protective effect so consistently?
That really is the core question, isn't it? It seems to boil down to perception. Hardy individuals interpret tough situations as challenges rather than threats.
Right. And that positive appraisal seems to be mediated by something called coping self-efficacy.
Confidence in your ability to cope.
Exactly. Higher hardiness means more confidence in managing stress, which then leads you to see the situation as that opportunity for growth, not something scary. It's like your internal software is wired for resilience.
Okay, so we've just mapped out how hardiness acts almost like a mental fortress, particularly against things like anxiety, PTSD, unhealthy coping. But what about the physical toll of military life? Can this internal shield help with that too? The review looked at this, but with fewer studies, right? Only 8.
That's right, fewer studies, but the connections were still significant. If we connect this to the bigger picture, hardiness also shows clear associations with physical health. Higher hardiness linked to fewer reported health symptoms, healthier behaviors like more physical activity, better general health perceptions, even lower BMI, and less sedentary time.
And fewer injuries.
And fewer injuries, yeah.
Yeah.
For instance, one study found hardiness was associated with decreased odds of getting a musculoskeletal injury during initial military training.
That's powerful. It's like a resilient mind encourages a more resilient body.
It certainly seems that way.
Were there mediating factors here too, like with mental health?
Yes. And this is really interesting. In one study, mental health fully mediated the link between hardiness and physical health.
Fully mediated. So hardiness helps the body because it helps the mind first.
That's what that finding strongly suggests. It really highlights how deeply interconnected our minds and bodies are. Emotion-focused coping also played a role.
Okay, but here's a critical nuance, something important for you listening to consider. Hardiness did not consistently lessen the impact of deployment-related stressors on physical health.
That's a key point. It suggests its protective effects might have limits under extreme cumulative physical pressures.
So even with immense mental fortitude, the body has its breaking point under that kind of intense, sustained physical duress.
It seems so. Hardiness isn't necessarily a magic bullet for everything physical, especially in those really extreme long-term deployment scenarios.
Okay, so we've got a really clear picture for mental and physical health with that important caveat. But the H2F framework is truly holistic. It includes sleep, nutrition, and spiritual health. What did the review tell us about hardiness there? Sounds like this might be where the research gaps are biggest.
Absolutely. This is where the data gets, well, sparse. But the early signals we do have are incredibly compelling, suggesting huge potential. For sleep health, for example, only 2 studies looked at it. One found higher hardiness was associated with reduced insomnia symptoms during a 4-month naval mission.
That makes intuitive sense, right? A resilient mind might shut off easier at night.
You'd think so. Fewer nights staring at the ceiling under pressure.
But the other study?
Well, the other study didn't find a significant correlation with overall sleep quality.
Huh. Why the difference?
It could be, perhaps, that other factors like environmental conditions, noise in barracks, constantly changing schedules, might dilute hardiness's specific influence on overall quality. It hints that even hardiness had its limits when faced with really disruptive environments.
That's a good distinction. Okay, what about spiritual health? H2F defines that as sense of purpose, values, meaning.
Exactly. And 2 studies showed a positive link between hardiness and things like religiosity, spiritual readiness, and spiritual performance. This suggests that higher hardiness aligns with a greater sense of purpose and inner strength.
Yeah.
It really clicks with that commitment C we talked about.
Having that strong internal compass makes sense. And nutrition.
For nutritional health, there was only one recent study in the review, but it found that hardiness was negatively associated with eating disturbance and disorder symptoms.
That's fascinating, especially in a high-stress environment where, unhealthy eating patterns can easily creep in.
It truly is. And what's particularly interesting here is that hardiness seemed to buffer the association between perceived stress and eating disorder symptoms.
So it played a protective role during stressful times.
Yeah, almost like hardiness makes you less likely to turn to food as an unhealthy coping mechanism when the pressure mounts.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does it all mean for us? The review seems to paint a pretty clear picture. Hardiness isn't just nice to have, it's crucial.
Absolutely crucial for holistic health in the military context. The review reveals a really robust association between higher hardiness levels and enhanced health across all 5 H2F domains. Those with greater hardiness consistently reported fewer mental health challenges, better physical health outcomes, reduced insomnia, healthier eating habits in high-stress settings, and greater spiritual well-being. It's remarkably comprehensive.
And the why behind it all seems to consistently point back to coping strategies, especially relying less on that avoidance coping.
It really does seem to be a key pathway. High hardiness individuals tend to appraise stressors as less threatening, which leads them towards healthier, more direct coping styles.
So hardiness acts like that protective shield, moderating the impact of stress, especially on mental and nutritional health.
Exactly. But, as you rightly pointed out, we need to remember that nuance for physical health under chronic, intense stress.
Right. Even hardiness has limits when the body is pushed to its absolute breaking point for long periods.
Correct. Nevertheless, the interconnectedness is clear. Improvements in one health area due to hardiness might well ripple out and positively influence others.
And for you, the listener, why does this matter?
Well, while the context here is military, these core components of hardiness, commitment, control, and challenge, they're universal, aren't they? The insights into stress, coping, holistic health, they could absolutely apply to any high-stress civilian environment you might face. A demanding job, personal challenges, just navigating everyday pressures.
This deep dive really shows the power of hardiness. So, thinking ahead, what are the big implications? What still needs to be explored? If hardiness is this beneficial, can we actually teach it or enhance it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, based on initial findings, looks like a promising yes. Given these consistent associations, future research absolutely should explore whether targeted interventions can enhance hardiness in military contexts. There's already been a pilot study showing it's feasible, which is incredibly encouraging.
Okay, so interventions could work, and they should probably focus on promoting those adaptive coping strategies we talked about.
Definitely. And coping flexibility, being able to shift strategies when needed.
Coping adaptability, adjusting to changing situations.
And critically, that coping self-efficacy, the confidence you can handle stress. These approaches directly strengthen the 3 C's of hardiness. They help people not just endure, but actually thrive.
So strengthening the foundations. What about research gaps? Where do we need more information?
Well, several areas. We need more longitudinal studies following people over time and experimental studies to really nail down cause and effect, not just correlations. Qualitative studies are also needed to understand the subjective experience, what it feels like.
Get the stories behind the numbers.
Precisely. And greater sample diversity is essential. Particularly regarding sex, females are underrepresented in a lot of this research, despite their increasing numbers in the military. And different roles too, combat versus support, for instance. Plus, standardizing the hardiness measurement tools would help compare studies better.
And crucially,
much more research on hardiness in those underexplored domains: sleep, nutritional, and spiritual health.
Yeah.
They're part of H2F, but we know the least about hardiness's role there.
Right. And thinking beyond the military again.
There's significant potential for these findings to inform civilian health promotion. We see examples like polar expeditions.
High stress, isolation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those studies show hardiness mechanisms might operate very similarly in other high-stress civilian settings. It really highlights the potential for cross-context learning.
What an insightful deep dive. We've really seen how this fascinating psychological trait, hardiness, can be such a powerful buffer against stress across mental, physical, nutritional, sleep, and spiritual health.
And connecting it back to the big picture, it just underscores the importance of fostering those core components: commitment, control, and challenge. While there's still much to learn, especially through targeted interventions and more diverse research, the evidence really points to hardiness as a pivotal factor in overall resilience.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. In your own life, what's one challenging situation you're facing right now? And how might viewing it through the lens of commitment, control, and seeing it as an opportunity for growth, the essence of hardiness, shift your approach to it? And perhaps even shift your overall well-being?